Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Engage TV. I'm your host Harrison Kratz, and today I'm actually in Boston, travel away from Philly for a little bit, and I'm sitting here with Eric Leist. Thank you for joining me today, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and Eric is a emerging tech strategist at Allen & Gerritsen.
That's
He's
right.
very focused on location-based services. You're the LBS Check founder.
Mm-hmm.
You host the About Foursquare podcast. And on your LinkedIn page, it still says that you are the national champion in competitive speaking from high school.
Yeah, back that was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but
Way back when, right?
yeah, way back when, a long time ago.
And Eric and I are actually from the same area too, which I actually just found out before we did this. So that's pretty cool. So, Eric, I just want to talk to you a lot about location-based. Seems like that you really have a lot going with that. So,
Sure.
I think just my first question is, where does your passion and focus for location-based, everything come from? Does it come more from your background with pre-SXSW, or does it come more from like technology, like love for technology?
Right. I think it mostly comes from just generally having a passion for helping people communicate. And that's something that I've been doing for years. I mean, you mentioned the speech thing a little bit, but since then I've been coaching high school kids on how to, enhance their speaking performance and whether that goes competitive or otherwise. And so I got into PR, and it was the same sort of kind of thing, helping brands and helping individuals communicate to the audiences that are important to them. So when I took this job as emerging tech strategist, I realized that there were a lot of people who needed a lot of help figuring out how to communicate through new technology. And that's kind of where my interest and passion for it comes from.
Gotcha. So as far as location-based, it's definitely going mainstream now, it seems like, and retail locations have really started to embrace it more and more. Now, how do you think that it's ultimately going to affect, retail consumerism on both sides, from the consumer's perspective and from a business side?
Mm-hmm. Well, they actually, you'll see a big case study come out of South by Southwest, which is next week. And I don't know if you know or not, but American Express is now teaming up with Foursquare.
I did see that,
in a way that, when you swipe your American Express card at participating venues, they'll give you a percentage off or a special deal automatically without having to go through the whole messy mobile deal redemption thing. That's going to be huge. Not necessarily.
GoWalla's doing something too, right?
GoWalla's headquartered in Austin, so
Okay.
they've got a ton of stuff planned for South by Southwest. But the retail thing is, the retail thing and the tying the location-based stuff to payments is huge, because it makes it more passive. It makes the whole check-in experience, the whole redemption, the whole sharing your location, whether that's privately with a brand or publicly with other people, it makes it much more convenient for people. And I think people feel a lot more secure when it comes to credit cards, because if there's ever any kind of security breach or anything like that, the fault is always on the card, and they always have some kind of identity protection thing that will back you up. So I think people will find that it's more secure, more valuable, and more convenient if all of a sudden they don't have to use their phone to check in, but rather they're using their credit card.
So and you're going to South by Southwest, right?
Yeah.
So what are you hoping to learn while you're down there? It seems like a lot of people, some people are skeptical, some people are going out of their minds right now. What are you hoping to get out of it?
Well, I'm heading down there on Friday morning with 3 other colleagues, and our goal is just to kind of get there and see a bunch of stuff that we think is going to be really interesting, and just come back really charged up about the new technology that's coming out, and learn a lot, but also just kind of be energized by the whole thing. I think it's going to be, I've never been before, but I've heard that it's a really exhausting experience, but it's also something that you come back and you feel like you really are ready to go again.
Yeah, you're ready.
So, one of the things that we're doing, and this is like the huge thing that we're doing, is we partnered with PepsiCo. And PepsiCo has this area of South by Southwest that's the podcast playground, but they also have a stage which is kind of shut off, and we're filming a show on the stage every day. It's called Tech Interruption,
awesome.
And it's based off of Pardon the Interruption on ESPN, but it's going to be all about tech and social media. So we've got some pretty cool guests signed on. I think we're going to get Dennis Crowley on. We've got Gary Vaynerchuk coming on. So tune into that. Tune into the hashtag TechEye, and you'll see all the kind of stuff we're talking about. Everything, all the new technology that we come across that we think is really interesting, or any kind of controversies that we find.
Do you guys need anybody to carry your bags?
Oh, we're going to be carrying bags around the whole time. We're going to be carrying bags around all week.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So Foursquare, they've kind of branched out of what they offer now. So recently they've added photos and comments to checking in. How do you think that's going to affect again, both sides. How do you think that's going to affect how retailers check in, or sorry, consumers check in, and how do you think that that'll alter how retailers maybe offer deals or offer rewards?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when they launched that whole comments and pictures, I guess that was Foursquare 2.0. That was back in like mid-December. We saw that was kind of the first step into an engagement model. And what that did was it allowed for brands to sort of do this thing. We call it delivering relevant content everywhere. So there's a difference between tying content to a venue and tying a venue to content. And so the difference is, in one scenario, you're actually experiencing something in the moment, and you get content through your mobile device. And the other, you have the check-in as an archive on the web, and there's content tied to that. So there's all kinds of experimentation that brands are going to be doing with that. Hugo Boss is a really cool example where they've got tips and pictures and stuff tied to venues that mirror their target audience's lifestyles. And so you'll see you'll see brands that can't reach consumers all the time try to reach consumers all the time through the location-based stuff. Okay. That's what Bravo is doing. Yeah. They realize that when people aren't sitting in front of their TVs, they're having no experience with Bravo. But they have all these reality TV shows. And so by tying the reality theme to the real world, it goes hand in hand in a way. So I think the pictures just kind of takes that to the next level. And for consumers, it gives a little more credibility, I think, when you see a tip that's from a brand that's well written by a copywriter and that is really thought out and well researched, as opposed to some guy on the street saying, "Hey, try the burgers here." So I think that it kind of goes both ways, because the content is coming from a valuable source, and because it's at a specific location, it's more relevant to consumers. But it's also a brand impression for brands.
Gotcha. So do you think that Scavenger's growth, as far as, because they have a much different way of doing the check-in. They have kind of rewards as you go. Do you think that the way that they've incorporated photos, do you think that really pushed Foursquare to bring out this new development?
No.
Or do you think that they're kind of individual?
I think that, when Foursquare released photos, they were pretty much the only location-based social network that didn't have photos before that. And I think that the way the Scavenger uses photos is very different than the way that Foursquare uses photos. Foursquare tries to kind of deliver this relevant content thing, but Scavenger tries to document exact experiences. And so I don't know that Foursquare really feels a lot of pressure from Scavenger. I don't think they do, because I think they're after very different things. And I think Foursquare is in a position that if they wanted to head toward the whole big time gaming thing, they could. But they're kind of staying in a position where they're experimenting into retail, and they've got a huge scale. So I don't feel like it was Scavenger that pushed them into it. But Scavenger had pictures, Koala had pictures, Whirl had pictures, and Yelp had pictures, and Where had pictures. So all that put together, I think, pushed Foursquare to do it. And a lot of people were calling for pictures on Foursquare. A lot of Foursquare users were saying, "We need pictures. We want this." And so they finally delivered it.
Okay. So, totally from a consumer's perspective, there's a lot of different reasons why people check in. Sometimes I check in for deals. Sometimes I just want that badge. Now, for more consumers though, what is the key factor, or is it kind of different when it comes to different groups of people? So, do most people go for the social gaming? Do most people go for the deals, or some people just do it just to try it?
Yeah, It's really different buckets. If you're talking about anybody who's going to be engaging in this location-based technology over the next year or two, Facebook has an algorithm where they have identified the fact that some of their users are gamers. They play games on Facebook, and then some of their users don't want anything to do with games. They don't think that games should have any place in Facebook. And I think you'll see that same kind of thing with Foursquare, whereas right now Foursquare's got some gaming elements. They've got the badges, they've got the leaderboards, which are we're not really sure what's going on with those. They haven't really innovated in the leaderboard space in a while. But then they're also kind of pushing for deals, and I think if you poll mainstream consumers about what they want from brands, specifically local branches, the number one response is always coupons and deals and exclusive offers and stuff like that. So I think if it goes mainstream, the people are going to use it because they're getting really awesome deals. But initially, the initial hook kind of comes from that gaming thing. Like you see, when people first get on Foursquare, they check in a lot, and they check in for badges, and they try to compete with their friends. And then it becomes maybe a little bit more social, and then maybe they'll only check in when it's really interesting or when there's deals involved. But I think people will go through different phases, but eventually everybody will come into, their own kind of bucket.
Okay. Now, one final question, because I know that you got to get going. You have a podcast to record tonight.
About Foursquare podcast after this.
Absolutely. So, my final question is that as it does move more mainstream and more businesses are going to be developing strategies, who do you think is going to be tasked with it? Do you think it's going to be PR? Do you think it will be marketing and advertising? Or do you think that will be more of tech strategists?
I think, it depends
or integration.
on...
It could,
It'll be some integration. I think it depends on the type of business. Okay. Right now, the big brands are trying to get into it, but the local brands, it's really easy for them. I'm sorry, not local brands. I mean local merchants. When it comes to small business owners, I think they're just going to have to own it the way that they own their other local marketing efforts. But when it comes to big brands, what I'm seeing is... integrated firms are pushing for it. There's a really cool firm in Washington, D.C. called Just3, and they've done a lot of really innovative stuff with Gowalla and with Foursquare. And I think you'll see integrated, maybe some marketing, but then when it comes to developing applications on top of the Foursquare API, we're talking mostly about, I'm seeing the advertising companies taking the lead on that because they have developers and they've done web development stuff before. And the big PR agencies don't really have that kind of mobility and that kind of, they don't have those kinds of resources because they've been focused mostly on kind of media in the past, 20 or 30 years. So I think if you look at the resources for people that have web development and have application development, those are the ones that are going to take the lead in doing really big campaigns on location-based social networks.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hopefully, maybe we'll get to catch up with you soon. We'll talk about a little bit about your experience at South by Southwest.
Yeah.
And what's the hashtag again for?
It's TechI, TECHI.
All right, and we'll have the links for everything. You have the About Foursquare podcast, so we should definitely all tune into. Now, when does that air?
Monday mornings. We record it Sunday nights, and it usually airs on Monday mornings.
Okay, perfect. So we'll give you guys a link to tune into the next episode of that. And again, Eric, thank you so much. Good luck at South by Southwest, and hope it's a blast.
It will be. Thank you.
Oh, and follow Eric at Eric Leist on Twitter.
Forgot about that Twitter thing.
All right, so thank you again for joining us, guys, for another episode of Engage TV, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.